I used to be an anxiously attached person, would literally read into everything and would see it as my problem, or they're acting this way because I did this. I used to love with a clenched fist instead of loving with an open fist to receive whatever it is that the relationship was giving. But with a clenched fist, I could not really receive or enjoy what was happening in the moment, because in my head I was creating the worst case scenarios of what could possibly happen in this connection, any better person that could come along, and stuff like that. And so I was always in my head, and I was always overthinking, and I was always focusing on one person, until I realized that I didn't want to live like this anymore. Of course, I always knew about anxious attachment, and I always knew I was anxiously attached, but this is how I went from anxious attachment to secure attachment, like this. The first step to actually going from anxious to secure is to actually identify why you are feeling anxious in a certain situation. First of all, it could be that the person you're with is pushing you towards the anxious side. They are not a very good communicator, or they are not really treating you well. Of course, in that situation, you would begin to be in a dynamic of like wanting to know what is really happening in the connection. Maybe a person's changed all of a sudden, they're no longer communicating. You're obviously left with that gap of like, what is happening here, and you want to close that gap. The second reason as to why you might be anxiously attached is spiritual. Before you leave, hear me out. As a follower of Christ, as a follower of Christ, there is something called idolatry, putting something first, putting someone first before God. And so when you find yourself always obsessing over someone, thinking about what they're doing, that person might be an idol in your life, and you need to reassess your priorities. The third thing as to why you might be in an anxious attachment is because of trauma from previous relationships or from your upbringing. Maybe growing up, you always knew that you needed to do something good first before you receive praise from your parents, or it might be that in the relationships that you've been in the past before, they have made you to be an anxious person even though you were secure before that. The fifth reason as to why you might be anxiously attached might be because of your own personal insecurities. And these are the things that you need to dive deep into yourself to realize your insecurities, the things that you need to work on to become secure in your connections. Now let's move on to the solutions. The first step to being securely attached is to get a life. Yeah, literally, because I've noticed in the times that I was anxiously attached, I had dropped my hobbies, I dropped the things that I love to do, I stopped focusing on my goals, on my future, and the things that I wanted in my life, and was just focusing on this person. And this made me, because when you're focusing on something, you really want the best out of it. Let's say you have a goal and you're focusing on it, you really want the best out of it, and your focus and energy is on it. Anything that we invest in, we obviously want an outcome. So when you stop investing in the things that you like, and stop investing in your goals and all of that stuff, and start investing it in the relationship, because you're making an investment of energy and investment of time, you're obviously now so much tied to the outcome of that relationship. And I've had a quote that says that people who are obsessed with romantic relationships do not have a purpose outside of that relationship. Because if you do have a purpose and you have things to do, you have hobbies, and you have still maintained your friendships, you would not be obsessing over one person, but they will just be a part of your life, and every other part of your life has things that are occupying it. So if you want to be a person who's not anxiously attached, you need to still be in sync with your goals, with yourself, with everything. The second principle that helped me to stop being an anxious person is to know that I would rather find out what would happen in a situation if I was not in control. Wouldn't you rather find out now than later what would happen if you're not in control? What would happen if you're not always calling, not always asking questions, and not always seeking for reassurance? What would happen if you just let go and received the love, let go and received whatever it is that you're going to receive, and enjoy the moment instead of clenching so much and focusing on the outcome and not actually being able to experience the things that you're receiving? So this is something that has really helped me to just let go and not be an anxious person and just detach from the outcome and experience the people. There was a quote that said that people are experiences and not possessions. And once you master this, once you master that people are experiences, not possessions, you stop loving with the clenched fist, but you love with an open arm because you're ready to receive whatever comes with that connection. Now, as a lady, you might want to look good and be exposed in terms of like going out with your friends, receiving more exposure, attending seminars, going to the gym, going to Pilates, going for golf, going for sports, just experiencing a whole new dimension of life instead of like just stuck in the same place. You're always at home because you're waiting for this person to call on you, you're waiting for this person to arrange a date so that you go out. Don't be a person who's just waiting. Be a person who has their own full life, who has their own things that are going on. There is one thing that I would need to clear, that is that because you're transitioning to a secure attachment, you're acting detached or like you're acting cold. No, that's not the thing. When we say loving with an open arm, it does not mean that you become a cold person. You are still warm, but you are detached in a sense of like you also have your own life and you're allowing them, giving them free will to make their own decision. There are gonna be times when you can receive a trigger. Maybe you haven't received a response in like 3 hours and you're probably wondering what are they up to, what are they doing. During this stage of transitioning to become your secure self, right? Instead of spiraling, sending a paragraph, starting to accuse a person, you need to just calm down. If you want to type that yourself, WhatsApp now has a chat that you can type to yourself. Type that message to yourself. Wait so that you can actually calm down before communicating. Now, being secure does not mean that you do not express your concerns, or if you're being disrespected, you don't speak up. But it means that is you speak up after thinking about something. You speak out of self-respect, not out of like spiraling or like an emotional outburst. You speak out because you've thought about it and you've realized that this doesn't work for me and I needed to change, not out of like an emotional outburst where you cannot control yourself, or like out of fear of like, oh, I'm about to lose this person. So you always need to keep your emotions in check. So in terms of triggers, when you're receiving a trigger, it doesn't mean that you're not transitioning to secure attachments, but it means that you need to take some time to yourself before you actually communicate. Take some time to yourself to just process everything, and then you might realize that you might not even send a long message afterwards if you've processed everything and you've just checked it with yourself. And then in cases where you actually know that you're doing your part and you're not like trying to control a person and you still feel like you're not being respected in the way that you would want to, then you know that that situation is not for you and it is time for you to exit. What I learned overall, there are not many points on how to turn from secure to from anxious to secure, but the concept that I learned is that you just need to let go and just give a person free will. God loves us so unconditionally. He loves us so much, but he gave us free will to choose to serve him, free will to choose to live for him. This is an example of how love should be like. You should give a person free will to choose you back, because that life is greater if someone has chosen you instead of you trying to control, you trying to send paragraphs, you trying to be always calling, what are you doing, where are you going. That is not a better situation, but you want to be chosen and you want to experience a person. You also want them to experience the best version of you. So this is the concept that has helped me to like just let go. So that's what I'm saying. Just let go and like just focus on your life, get a life, focus on your hobbies, focus on your friends, and you will see how this is going to just change the way you see this person. You will not see them as your whole life, but you will see them as part of your life. If you're new here, my name is Charlotte, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.